Yes. No. Maybe. Greetings. I'm adjusting my Apogee mic. They should never give me a volume control because I allow for a little bit of clipping. Let me test it. Let me see my waveform. Testing 1, 2. Okay, well, a few spikes. There you go. So if I yell, yeah, it's still going rad. Testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2. Top of the morning. Well, here's the thing. Get ready. See, I don't even like to, my response was in my music. That's where you heard my, what was going on. And the next is the Sermon on the Mount. But the way it gets broken down is not the way you might think. This is the Zeph Report podcast. It first is uploaded immediately to SoundCloud. We still have our facility. I noticed that in my iPod Touch, they've put it on some other person, so you have to have like a third-party recorder and upload it through Dropbox, which is kind of a drag because that thing is really light and easy, and you could interact more. But I'm just going to interact with what we've had, the last few days, and since the song came out. One of my favorite right now, the mixes, is Kelly's song. I think that came out tremendous. I previewed that for I played it for a couple of people yesterday in the studio. The 96K Wave Master, and right from the session, but the final master before we distributed it, and they were sufficiently wowed by it. It's just one of those tracks. But I am sufficiently wowed too by the latest. It came out just perfect for what I was. It's nice when you intend something and then you're able to say it. But the both Revelation 2, which the Lord wanted me to do, and I felt led by the Lord. I felt led by the Spirit to do that one, and to do then E13, which is based on Ezekiel 13, which is the chapter of false prophets. Now, false prophets. I was going to just read like I did with Rev 2. I kind of read some stuff, but then that I wasn't supposed to read any more than just like a couple of things that stuck out, which summarize the chapter, which I think you can summarize the chapter in Revelation as Jesus' message to the churches is, gosh, I got it like a lisp or something. Yeah, I always had a slight, but now it's like, is basically the word is liars. Liars. And the next thing was false prophet. I mean, what do you say? It's like, hey, the Gulf is still there, false prophet. The BP oil spill didn't put a crack in the earth and it was gone. Never moved off the Gulf Coast, false prophet. Still here, false prophet. I mean, don't you feel like that's it? Don't you feel that's it? So let the music do the talking. Last few days, and I'm working on a couple others. One is Politician, and that features some classical music riffs for people that like classical or orchestral music. And then, I love it because I'm able to go. I can be very creative in that form of music, and thank God that Pro Tools writes the music out. So if ever it needed to be produced by the Philharmonic Orchestra, at least, we can print the music out for all the pieces. Thank you. It's nice to edit the music and to edit the notation rather than MIDI notes. It's nice. But the only thing the program can't figure out is what key I'm in. It's like, that's right, it's too complex for the program to figure out. We're not staying in one key. We're moving around from key to key, just like Beethoven. I mean, there's a root key, sure, but I mean, you move into different aspects of other keys, and that's what makes the music interesting. It's not it's not staying in one key and doing the same thing over and over. It's building and developing the emotions through the music. The music's all about emotions. That's why, and the greatest instrument, I guess, would be the singing voice. And the greatest instrument is the voice. Like the voice. This is a voice too. You're getting the voice. Why is that important? Because this is how we communicate. This is how the Lord, communicated this. The paradigmatic communication. It's the micro macro. It's the explanation of the light and dark. So, yeah, I understand. Okay, so this is what I got to do. Have my one more shot of this espresso, and we're gonna have to. I don't know that we went through. Well, I have to digress a little because. There's about 15 hours of podcasts that you didn't get for whatever reason. Some very detailed. There's one that's on my, I believe it's on the iPod Touch. But it's kind of, it may not be there anymore. Actually, I don't know. It's probably not there anymore. But that's okay because, all of those 15 hours may and probably will help us to distill this into one, because what I'm going to lay on you is it's a principle of the universe that when you understand it, you can be more at peace because you understand it's not personal. It's more like physics. Physics is God's physics. Nature is God's nature. Okay. So we're going to look at Genesis 1. And I'm going to show you how the Bible is not taught, which is always amazing to me, that it's just not taught. When God created the light and the dark, get your mind around that. I think we did talk about this, but we have to talk about it again. He created the light and the dark. Now, this is very interesting, because in so doing, you have the key to all creation, the key to good and evil, obviously, the key to the conjunction of opposites and the collision of opposites and the repulsion of opposites, the electrical connectivity necessary to make corporeal beings, which I think we would all argue is a big part of it. As we look at the chapter, and God said, okay, first of all, the earth was without form and void. Void. Let's think about that. Let's translate that. No form and void. Darkness was upon the face of the deep. Well, it's indicating that the earth was without form, but there was a deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Many people reject the Lord because of the book of Genesis. I hope you understand that. I mean, before we even get into this, we have to understand that the book of Genesis has done more to turn people away from God and done more to actually mind control people, because a child would ask, well, if the earth was without form, why is there deep? Why are there waters? And that's not that, I mean, we can spend a year on that. One cannot say, well, that's simply that it was destroyed from before, and it was with the earth was without form. Well, then it wasn't formed. Moving across the waters is a contradiction. I mean, I don't mean to harp on stuff like that, but it's like, if you blindly accept, you go, oh, that makes sense. I get it. You accept that, then you're basically a victim of trauma-based mind control, because it's kind of like accepting, your parents hit you, and then they act like everything's fine at dinner, and then no one says anything, and so they keep hitting you and hitting you and hitting you, or your husband, or whatever. Okay, and it never gets shoved under the rug. Well, that becomes trauma-based mind control, because you accept, by not stopping and saying, what about this? You then end up being programmed to go along with many other things. That's why when you go to the church, they did not want me asking questions, because these are the kinds of questions I would ask in front of the group. And they felt that that was disruptive, to ask questions about Scripture. I said, well, you want me to accept that this is the infallible Word of God, and then when I ask a question about a contradiction, you say, no contradiction exists, you need to just believe. You need to pray, brother. The world is still in you. You need that beaten out of you. The Lord is He's going to, burn off the dross, and this is all part of dying to self. And it's like, okay, with all your BS, you huckster, you liar, and you con man, you dare to take these children here and turn them into your little slaves, and then eventually bugger them, which is, unfortunately very common. GDU. And you know something? That's not even harsh enough. I don't want anyone to burn in hell. Well, if ever there was someone to burn in hell, it would be people that take children, child traffickers, people who hurt children. I believe that, burning in hell would be actually a light sentence. And no, I don't care if they burn in hell. No, I'm not praying for their souls. I'm praying for justice to be done in their case, and for God's will to be done. Amen. Whatever His will is. I think it's very serious when you turn people away from God through teaching God's Word. I think that's one of the biggest crimes against humanity that there could possibly be. And yet it happens every day without even a whimper from anyone. They just go happily down the path to their destruction. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw the light, and it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. Okay, God divided the light from the darkness. Well, if there's light, wouldn't it be, against the darkness, which was upon the face of the deep, etc.? Now, my point here is, God called the light day, and the darkness He called night, and evening and morning were the first day. Okay, so basically, it's a cosmogonic tale here. This is basically kind of written in the form of mythology. Okay, it's not written to be scientific fact, and it's written to be looked into. There's nothing really wrong with applying any kind of logic to this. It's just that people don't do it. Anyway, when you say create the light and the dark, creating the opposites, okay? We have the light and the dark, the good and the bad. We have the tree of good and evil, the tree of knowledge, the forbidden tree in the garden, right? We have the tree of life, of eternal life, but then we have the tree of good and evil, light and dark. And what happens if man eats it, then he'll know the opposites. He'll know good and evil. Well, who created the light and the dark? The devil? No, God created the devil, and he created the angels. God created the night. God created the day. He created the children of the light, because that's what you are. And he created the children of the night, and that's what they are. And he put both upon the earth from the very beginning of time, Cain and Abel. This whole business about, one is the child of the devil, one's the child of the Lord, that's all BS. It's all the Lord. Period. People that do that are themselves mind controlled. They have been programmed by avoiding the truth of the scriptures from before, when they were children, perhaps. They give the devil too much power he does not have. So God created the light and the dark, the opposites, the union of opposites, and from that collision, union, etc., that yoke of which is paradigmatic of sexual union, a union of the universe, the union of things, forms, and from all this comes matter, the material realm, which is only one of many realms, but it's the material realm. Cannot exist without these opposites the way they are. Thus and therefore, there was a mistake in the thinking of the Masonic, the high-level Masons, or let's just say the secret society Luciferians, or if you like, the mighty men of the earth, or if you like, the Nephilim, slash human hybrid oriented people, who have been here from the very beginning with full protection of the mighty God. And they do horrible things. How can you say God protect? Because if he didn't protect them, they wouldn't be here. Now, their existence is dependent on the light and the people of the light. These are people. It's a codependent situation. They're dependent on the people of the light. In nature, there is always equilibrium between the opposites. And in all things, whether it's the elasticity of economic paradigms, or no matter what you have, you always have the market coming into equilibrium. It's based on human nature. It's based on nature, actually. In other words, the price that a person is willing to sell and willing to buy, which is equilibrium, always comes out of the marketplace. It never ceases to amaze me how we can arrive at price of things. It's just like a perfect model of the creation and the light and the dark and the opposites and all that. You have buyers and sellers, enemies and friends. You have all kinds of things, but everything has to come to a point of, has elasticity, and everything comes to a point of equilibrium. It's like, for example, if you push it toward the side of darkness, and you pull the rubber band so far that way, it will snap back and even go further into the realm of light as it snaps back, and then it will come back toward the darkness again. You see what I mean? Until it finally reaches equilibrium between the two. And that's what forms the worlds, and that's what forms the people, and that's what forms nature. That's how the sun works. That's how the planets revolve. That's how things come into being, but have symmetry. Now put your mind around, first of all, inventing time-space, light and the dark and the opposites, and then put that as a framework that you're standing outside of and inside of at the same time. And consider that for just one moment when you consider the person of God. And it's mind-blowing. Consider now that the earth, And again, you have to break down the book of Genesis because, like I said, it turns more people off to God and his workings than any other book in the Bible because of the giant the insane. You'd have to be completely insane to teach this to children and say this is literally literal truth. It's like, what is? The earth had no form, or it did have form and there was a deep? I mean, which one is right? And you can go through step by step and find a million things like that. I don't bother with that because I'm not trying to disprove it. I'm saying, and I'm going beyond the negators and the affirmers saying it's perfect, don't touch it, don't think, just turn your mind off and do what you're told. That's really what they're telling you, which is why I can't stand religion and people that are yoked in religion, wearing their little religious uniforms and collars. I mean, it's completely unbelievably ridiculous. Jesus never required that. Of course not. That you separate yourself out as some kind of like some job, here's your uniform. That, of course, is blasphemy. But, I mean, it's ignorance more than anything else. So here's the thing. Okay. And here's where I'm going with this. I want to then fast forward to the world today and the world that you grew up in. And you'd say, well, it seems like it's just mainly man doing bad things continually. So it seems more evil than good, but there is good too. Good has been this. I look outside, I see the abundance of nature. The abundance, I have the privilege of walking around an area where there's no one out there. There's nothing out there. Endless possibility for people. I look at the sea. I've had the pleasure of growing up at the sea where I could see out over the sea. And I one time lived on a bluff where I could look out over the bluff, over the sea. And I could see endless possibilities, endless resources, and endless bounty, endless beauty. And naturally, I saw no humans populating it and disturbing it. Flying over the country, which I've had the privilege to do, and I'm always loving to look at the topography of the land. It fascinates me, especially around New Mexico, and how it goes from the plains to the mesas. I just can never, even when I'm flying just a quick trip to Arizona, I'm looking and I'm just watching where the mesas end, and then the kind of, mountains of Arizona, which are not mesas, continue, and then it drops down to a real arid desert floor. And you know what? A lot of people look out there and not see anything. And I love it as we fly by. You can see the red rocks of Sedona if you're on one side of the plane, and you can see the mountain at Flagstaff. But you're flying into Phoenix, so you're making a turn right there. But you go by those things, and I love seeing them from the air. Because as I look out the window, I don't see any humans, really. I see a few cars, and not really any cities, There's every once in a while there's a city, but they're few and far between. There's mainly just land with nothing but abundance. When I look at the world and I see the earth, how you can look at an image of it online where it's the cities are lit up. I see mainly darkness. I don't see cities everywhere. I see vast areas with nothing and seas with very little activity at all. And I see skies with hardly any activity at all. And I see the firmament with hardly any activity at all. Just endless possibility. Endless marvelousness. No, it's not going to be a talk about the need for depopulation and population control and limiting this population explosion, thus justifying the whole point of the whole population eugenics is because people are psychopathic mass murderers in their hearts, and they want to kill people, so they use science of overpopulation to justify mass murder. That's all it is, and they're too cowardly to admit that that's what they really are when they're coming up with their little policies and plans. They're actually murderers, but they can't admit it. They want to do it in a way that's safe. They want to do it in a way that they can get away with, right? So they use science to justify, well, it's for the greater good because we can't handle this kind of population. When you look at the earth, there isn't anyone on it. There's very little activity going on of man. You fly up to Alaska. You look out. I kid you not. You go from Seattle to Alaska. That's like a 3.5 hour flight. You look out the window. Nothing but endless possibility as you fly over Canada and all the mountains. There's nobody there. There's literally nothing all the way to Anchorage. Nothing. In 3.5 hours of flying, no people. Okay, that's what I mean by nothing. No people. I mean, you get a little bit as you're flying over like Vancouver and stuff, but I'm just saying the wilderness from most of the way, there's no people. Nobody on the ocean, no boats, nothing. A couple of tankers, a couple of, cargo carriers. That's it. Sorry to inform you, but you've been lied to. You just look for yourself and you'll see. What are they all squawking about? What are they all arguing about? What's wrong with these people? And indeed, they are under some sort of control, some sort of delusion that they live their lives by, and they happen to be the heads of sciences. Well, I'm sorry. The most hilarious one, of course, is what global warming now. It's become climate change because they can't do anything with the warming because the planet's gone into a cooling cycle now, and there's nothing they can do, so they have to try to change the narrative to steal from the people because they're thugs and thieves and criminals, and that's all they are. And they'll try to cook up one scheme or another, and this one's fallen apart at the seams. So they use geoengineering to try to cause droughts and things like that. So they can then say, you see, and then you have the idiot of all idiots, Governor Idiot Jerry Brown, going and talking about this global warming. Well, global warming is a Democrat policy. It's the Democrats. It's the left. The left is godless. So it's very simple. The left-handed path is the path of Satan. The right-handed path is supposed to be the path of righteousness, but it's not exactly like that because you have it's kind of a mixed bag on each side. But there's more of a preponderance of the satanic, obviously. Totalitarianism is Satanism in a political form. Communism is Satanism in a political form. The people that formed communism were all Satanists. So just letting you understand that. Because we're coming into an understanding here about the world. Now, in the beginning, we had a very important story in the Bible. These stories are all so layered, I could spend a year on almost one verse. That's why I love the Bible, because it's there, the truth is there, but it must be handled in the spiritual realm where truth comes from. It can't be handled, and it has to be in a worshipful way, which is to approach Scripture with respect and not have preconceived or politically motivated preconceptions that have been instilled in you because you were taught a certain thing or forced to spit it back on a test, or it became ingrained in your consciousness that the book of Genesis is really this when it's really something else entirely. In fact, all the books are like that. It's also fluid in that Scripture is also used to comfort people and used to inspire people. It's used to give visions to people. It's used to help people to see through the kaleidoscopic malaise of hurt and trauma, which is existence on earth. But still, there's the concept of equilibrium. Still, the light cannot exist without the dark. You can't see it, right? And the darkness cannot exist really without the light. There must be a balance of the two in order to produce the material realm. I see, and I'm taking a leap there, but basically, most people in the sciences will understand that, yeah, in a sense, you've simplified it, but yeah, that's right. A heart would not beat without that, the certain kind of existence we have based on, that's like where electricity comes from, and where, and the biggest electrical thing we got is the sun, right? So, but anyway, so people get confused when, and you just forgive me by, my style here in presentation is not like a teacher, and I admit I'm just not very patient. So I'm going to try to, let me see if I can find is this the, okay. So we have the mark of Cain. And we understand that in Genesis 4, then Cain is, he rises up against Abel. He kills him, but more importantly, Cain is agriculture, and Abel is animal husbandry. God requires a sacrifice. It's usually a burnt offering of your prize calf or whatever, raising cattle. Cain's offering, and all this is very layered. We could spend a lot of time just on the idea that Cain has crops and Abel has livestock. And God has blessed both. I mean, it's not like you have to have one or the other. When Joseph gave, his lost brethren, because the tribes were starving, grain was given as a modality of sustenance. So obviously it's a blessing. Not saying one is better or worse than the other. I mean, you could take it another way and say, well, yeah, there's pagans, i.e. earth people, and, earth worshippers, and then there's, there's celestial people who have their eyes on the Lord, and they're not going to be worshiping rocks and trees and suns and moons and whatnot. It's kind of a choice. Actually, it's kind of like your heart. You are born a certain way, and you're the kind of person you are from the very beginning. Either on one side, kind of on the other. I mean, you use your free will to you can still make a choice, but I mean, most people that make a choice against their own souls are obviously lost, or they're more like the prodigal son and daughter. Okay, so anyway, Cain was upset because his offering was not really accepted like his brother, so he slays his brother. And then, of course, this kind of phrase of the Lord said to Cain, "Where is Abel thy brother?" Of course, the Lord knows all this. One must point out to impressionable minds that this is written in a style for the purpose of being able to teach it, but it has logical. If God is God, why would he have to say to Cain, "Where is Abel?" Like, "Where are you, Adam?" Like, I don't know where you are. Or like he didn't know when he made Cain and Abel, or when he made Adam, or when he made the world, that there'd be a Cain and Abel and one would slay the other. He of course would know all that from even before the idea of the worlds began, which they never began because it's an infinite, ongoing mystery. So he says, "What have you done?" The voice of your brother's blood cries up from the ground. Yes, the blood of the lamb and lambs cries up from the ground. "And now you're cursed on the earth, which has opened her mouth to receive thy brother's blood from your hand. And when you till the ground, it shall not henceforth yield unto thee her strength. A fugitive and a vagabond you will be on the earth." And Cain said to the Lord, "My punishment is greater than I can bear. But behold, thou hast given me out of this day the face of the earth, and from thy face shall I be hid.
and I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond on the earth. And it shall come to pass that every one that findeth me shall slay me. Now here's the kicker. We're just be patient, and it will yield fruit. I can hear you yelling at the radio. Just don't bother. And the Lord said unto him, Therefore whosoever slayeth Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. Now Cain, obviously a liar and a murderer, and now a vagabond, a criminal. But if anyone, even a righteous one, would take up any kind of aim to hurt Cain, vengeance will be upon that one sevenfold. Now that just makes you stop and wonder, doesn't it? And the Lord said, He put a mark upon Cain so that people would understand not to kill him. And of course, now let's apply this the way it's meant to be taught. This is applied to a certain kind of beings. Okay? And it applies, quite literally, to our world today. Because there's a tendency of one side or the other to want to eradicate the other. You have people don't really realize this about Obama, but because they all think he's so bright, but that's really more leftists that would think that. He's proven to be very, very ignorant. He's proven to have no grasp of history, for example, no grasp of really anything. He's a fabrication in a way. He can look really intelligent. He can act the part. He can make you think he's very intelligent, but he doesn't have the background. He doesn't have the yearning for the he doesn't, and as a result, the world suffers for his lack of knowledge of history. And it's not really being taught anymore. It may not even be his fault. It's he's subject to the educational. I mean, we were all taught to go become lawyers and get through history, just get a passing grade and move on, not to become interested in history. But I think history would be would serve us well here when you're dealing with the whole thing with Islam and all the history of Islam and the battles in Christianity and all the things that go all the way back for thousands of years. It would be good to understand how it came to be, so people could understand what's going on in the modern age. But without history, you can't understand. You with history, you can go, oh, this happened back in 634, so and in 700 this happened, and then this, and then you could work it forward until where you are today. You go, oh, this is just like then. You say, and go, yeah, we don't want that we have to learn from history, because otherwise we're doomed to repeat it. And so, but here's the biggest mistake made. I'm not going to mean to digress on Obama, because Bush was also a compromise in that he was also uneducated, and so you have, Clinton's probably the last one we had with any kind of education, but I'm not sure it was of a historical nature, which is, I think, a president should be equipped with a command of history, and also with a command of military history. Very, very important. Very important. So people understand how we get into these conflicts, and then what other people did in certain similar circumstances. But I'm about to lay on you something here, and I'm going to pull this all together now. Cain and Abel, light and dark, good and bad, evil people aren't eradicated from the earth. The flood comes, and this is the key to the flood understanding, yet the evil people still remained on the earth. And how did they get there? It's like, yeah, okay, well, before you drive a truck through that plot hole, understand the point of it is that God did not get rid of the wicked people, of the Cainites. That should have been it. And this was addressed by Darren Aronofsky in his I'd say it's a good effort he made in Noah to kind of deal with some complex issues, but it may have fallen short as a great film. But he's capable of making great films. Anyway, I think that he tried to address it by having Tubal Cain, of right. He's like almost the god of certain secret societies, sneaking on board the ark, which is not biblical, of course, but as a way of dealing with how they get thereafter. A child would ask, well, if God got rid of all the wicked people and everything and just had Noah just because it was a genetic thing, how come God was impotent to the point that he couldn't take care of business? Because there were still these people later on, after the flood. How's that possible? You're just supposed to shut up and turn your mind off, not think, don't ask those questions. Don't you know the Bible's infallible? Now, don't you believe? You want to be part of this church, you have to believe. Oh, yes, sir. Right on. I will do what you say. I will just believe, just like, and what does that teach you to do? You look at the military today, if there's, the militarization of police willing to shoot unarmed citizens, that mentality could only come through mind control because, fellow countrymen don't shoot each other. And that comes from mindlessly going along and following orders, right? That you don't question the order, you learn to just at rote don't think. And that's how the Nazi soldiers, before you blame them, the Nazi soldiers would shoot on their fellow citizens and unarmed civilians, and they wouldn't even take people to the camps a lot of the time. They would just take them out and just gun them all down because they weren't the right sort of people. In other words, they want to eradicate they have a plan on just bringing the good people, what they consider to be the good people, and get rid of the others. Obama, because he doesn't understand history, I'm going to back this up with a fact, he tried to eradicate is trying to eradicate the Republican Party forever, which of course can't happen because the law of equilibrium, God's law, states that it would never be possible because there has to be equilibrium in nature. Because he doesn't understand that. He doesn't understand that in this endeavor, he will only make himself fall and fade. And if he had wisdom, he would understand that there has to be that Republican over there so that there could be that Democrat over there. And see, the Republican and Democrat represent symbolically two different kinds of people, even though it's a blend and a mix and it's Hegelian dialectic. I understand all that, but I'm just saying, at least symbolically, one wants to get rid of the other wants to get rid of the other, like cats and dogs. You'd think the coyotes would have gotten rid of all the rabbits because rabbits are very meek, but no. And you'd think that man would be able to get rid of the coyotes because they're killing his chickens or whatever. No. The law of equilibrium states that both the lamb and the lion will coexist. It's just the most bizarre thing. I see these jackrabbits running around, and I know there's coyotes and predators all over the place, and they just seem happy as can be. There's a protective mechanism. There's a mechanism that I like to call, equilibrium in nature that keeps a balance. This idea of balance is crucial to understanding why Albert Pike's work, Albert Pike's vision that he expressed through a letter to his colleague or his friend or whoever it was in the 1800s, that he will launch a horror upon the world and they will bring about World War III, whether people like it or not. Of course, even back in those days, they could have any war that happened was planned years in advance, and they dragged the people along into it. That people don't have any say, and they never really have. I mean, it's always been the same world in that way. Like this riot thing in Ferguson, okay? This is planned, and everything you're seeing is staged. Nothing happens unless it is staged. Everything that you see that happens is not natural. It's all staged. It has to be planned. They have to have a framework. Now they think, and I'm going to show you but we're not going to focus on this terrestrial thing right now. We're going to focus more on this greater concept of you know, of being. Within us is a fight between, there's a demonic aspect of you out and outside of us. There's the air. There's good thoughts and bad thoughts. There are thoughts inspired by the demonic, thoughts inspired by by the virtue of God, by the virtues, by the holy of holies, by the harmonies of the Lord. And then there's dastardly, banal, and I would say very base thinking that comes from the libido or jealousy or whatever. You know what I mean? And has balance because you're a physical being, right? And you're a spiritual being, kind of uncomfortably locked together in one and trying to figure that out. And nobody ever really does, so don't worry about it. Nobody ever, oh, finally I've got it. I must be a transgender. That's it. And now I'm accepted by this political party. I mean, no, I'm just saying all that is of course ridiculous because there's no point of rest because the material realm continues on. Yes, it goes out. It's transitory. So nobody can make a home here and say this is my home. You know what I'm saying? I mean, a home has to be in the spiritual realm because the home cannot be in the physical realm. Because nothing is in stasis. Everything is moving and living, birth, sustenance, dying, what we call dying, but it's really transforming into something else and then living again. And it's all like that. It's all constantly moving in that way. But nothing is permanent in this realm that we're in right now. Because that's the only way we could have being. We could express, we could have an exterior being, which is what we are. Because otherwise we'd be interior. But now we're exterior. And there's two schools of thought. One is that there's always been Cain, and there's always been Abel. And there has always been a little, kind of an imbalance there in a sense in this realm, which we call the Luciferic paradigm or paradigmatic model, which is the cosmogony of Lucifer created by manipulation of the free will of humanity and the opening of a certain door, a certain pathway that became, the way of the world. So it is supernatural in nature when one goes the way of the world. People take it so lightly; they think it's funny almost. And I keep telling them, I say, that way that you're on. I'm mainly addressing this to Christians. That way that you're on is going to be end in a horrible tragedy. Your life will be a tragedy. And they're always, they always go on, I'm having a good life. They always, it's funny when people come up to me and they're saying, I'm having very defensively, like, GD it, I'm having a wonderful life. What are you talking about? And I'm not talking, I'm just saying that the only way to really be at peace with this world and the situation that we're in is to have that relationship with the Lord, which you cannot have if you're on the way of, there's two ways. There's the narrow way of Christ, right? Becoming a disciple of Jesus, a disciple of God. And the other way is to be on the path of the world or conform to the world. And the last thing we need right now are conformists, okay? Fathers, don't conform your sons right now. We need poets and visionaries and artists, and we need to kind of rebuild this because that's what's is always quashed with totalitarianism. If you notice that the art forms of the totalitarians is always tawdry, it's always it's always deconstructive. It's barbaric at times. You know what I mean? It's chaotic. Whereas the virtues of God are symmetrical. I mean there's a certain beauty in the symmetry and the whatever for whatever reason, but both are valid. I'm not going to rail against the side of darkness today because I understand something I did not understand before. And this is, take advantage of my. We shouldn't have ageism in this country, but we do, unfortunately. But take advantage of my age here, if you would. And the fact that I pondered these things a long time and I've studied these things a long time. So take advantage of that rather than, well, we're inverted here. But I mean, understand that, if merely existing more years and then experiencing things as you get older, there's a wisdom that comes in, whether you like it or not. It's amazing how that happens, as we tend to be going more toward the spiritual realm, which is the realm of knowledge, where knowledge comes from, where inspiration for music comes from, where inspiration for speaking in this manner comes from, where inspiration for art and all kinds of things cannot come from people that are materially obsessed. But see, understand, before you get up, you think I'm going to be repeating something I've said in the past. It's not going to be. The light and the dark are created. There's a mark on Cain that if you try to do something, it's sevenfold. God does not bless the eradication of Cain, just like he won't bless the eradication of his people either. Now, if we look at the book of Revelation, we see multitudes being slain for their testimony, and they're being overcome by the beast and all that. That happens. But the overcome are also the overcomers. They may be slain in the physical, but I think it's meant to be read like this: You're transforming from the physical to the spiritual. That's back home, and in so doing, that there is the eternal reward. It's, if you look at it in an interior fashion, in a multidimensional fashion, in the book of Revelation, chapter 7, chapter 14, that you start to understand that when we're talking about the multitudes, we're talking about the entrance into the spiritual realm cannot be through the physical modality. It must be through the spirit. So we must, die to self, Christ, and live in the spirit. And then that transformation in that realm, there's no death, obviously. So there's no, even if you physically give up your body, there's no death really. But I want to get to this point so that you could be at peace. The light and the dark. Okay, let me start another way. Cain is marked and protected. Cainites are protected. Otherwise, you could just go get all the evil people, round them up, and shoot them all. God will never allow that. You see, there's a principle here that if there's anyone there that's a top Luciferian, you need to listen up. Just you might, hey, look. You know what? We don't even have a conflict. I don't have a conflict with a Luciferian because I'm not really into this world that much. You know what I mean? They have more of a terrestrial thing going on, and that's fine. I wasn't made that way. But I can tell you this: without that equilibrium, Mr. Luciferian, Mr. Albert Pike, and whoever else, you have you have abrogated the laws of God and will suffer the consequences. That sevenfold curse. So when we apply this to the New World Order, yes, the evil people are there and they're running the institutions or whatever, and there's obviously been uncovered again in the news. There's a group out there that's, uncovered that, yes, the Catholic Church and corporations, all this stuff, they're all involved in Satanism. It's like, oh my God, wow, what a surprise. But they're doing some good work. They're trying to stop children from being abducted and sacrificed, but they can't have a ritual they need children for sacrifices because that's the way they've operated for thousands of years. So, and God, you'd think, well, why not just maybe he's pushing back, obviously, using the exposure of the internet and things, are bringing out some of these names. Some of these names are names of heads of corporations, the Pope, all kinds of things. And things are happening with the Pope that have to do with this case. It's very, very interesting, and it's very, my prayers for. I'm not sure what to think of it yet because I'm new to this whole thing. I'm just looking at it right now, and I'm wondering if it's not some sort of psyop. And probably you are too. I've been burned so many times, I don't know. But if they can stop children from being hurt, then I'm all for it, because God hates that. And just imagine, but when I say God hates it, God's allowing it. If he hates it, why? Here's what a child would say to us right now. Well, Dad, Mom, whatever, if God hates it, why doesn't he just stop them? And then I could see the pastor saying, because he would be abrogating free will, which was a gift he gave without repentance, that we all have free will. It's like, not exactly. He could do it without abrogating free will. He could actually do it under the law of equilibrium, and he'd be fine. But that law is in place, and God is not this human guy that's going to be throwing darts or whatever. He's everything. It's the law of all things, and that's God as a person is all these things. So you have to get out of the idea of God being distant and some guy out there to God being right there with you and right here in the laws of physics and nature and all, and what that is his word right there. So when the coyotes take too many rabbits, then something happens to the coyotes. And I'll just put this in quotes because it's such a broad, term, the Illuminati wants to eradicate for the New World Order all the Christians and children of God and Yahweh and the Jews and the Muslims and the Christians, all these people, get them all to slaughter each other, and then we'll have our own New World Order. Can't happen because it violates God's law, and that is that there has to be an equilibrium in nature. Therefore, if the side of darkness, and I think people on that side would agree that they are darkness, but then they say, we're of the light because Lucifer is the light bringer, but they really realize, you know what I mean? They have a certain, objectively, they're just seen as the darkness, and there's children of the light. They're children of the night, that would be the occult, that would be all that stuff, and there's children of the light. But anyway, or children of the day, if you like, to make it scriptural. If that side eradicates the other, as they begin to do so or depopulate, they, by the nature of what they are, fade in power and they fade out. If the other side, a side of light, tries to eradicate this darkness, they too fade out. It's amazing. I've always said from the very beginning, if I were a ruler of the earth and I was like fully lock, stock, and barrel with Satan, I'm throwing 50, 100, 200, 500 virgins into the volcano every other day or whatever, and I'm really kind of running. I would make sure, so I could keep my cushy little lifestyle going, I would make sure there are plenty of lambs around. Otherwise, there'd be an adjustment in reality by nature that I couldn't control that would wipe me out. I wouldn't see where it's coming from, but it would, there would be, if it gets tipped a certain way, then another thing happens. There's a cause and effect. So therefore, Albert Pike's scenario would never be doable in nature because he failed to comprehend the law of equilibrium back in those days. He didn't understand that there is no one without the other. That the wheat and the tares are together, but they're intertwined. There's no way to have existence. And, I'm not against people going after evil, crime fighters, and people going after these people that are hurting children and whatnot, and human trafficking and all that. I mean, it's totally evil, and it all has to do with children and rounding them up for rituals because, the world's hungry for their blood, because that's the way they live. They can't even live without that. It's a parasitical thing. They have to, what do you do when you sacrifice a child? and you have it altered, you kill it, then you have an order. You've released the life force that they have to take in to keep going, or they fade. They know the term fade out, what that means. So as they kill the Christians in the Middle East, they fade out. There'll be a change. Now, the people at the very top of the echelon, they know what I'm saying. The people at the very top, close to the top of the pyramid, they understand this. And they made a decision. They got to pull the program. They know that Pike's vision is not doable because it violates physics, which is the law of God. It just is the way it is in nature. There's no way, because if you take the one thing out, then you yourself go out. You fade, because without that, they can't exist anyway. Without the light, then the darkness has no place. And the same thing. The curse is, if you try to go eradicate all the people of the darkness, and it's not God's will, obviously, there's a sevenfold curse. It seems it's very unfair, because people are just trying to do good. They get punished so severely. Whistleblowers and everything else, but more or less there's some kind of protection there. Well, it's the protection of Lucifer and the demons. It's like, well, are they stronger than God? Obviously, in your mind they are. Or is this more like a law? And it's more like a law, is more the truth. It's the law of equilibrium. It's the same reason the coyotes don't overrun the rabbits and every other species. You have to look at it this today. You have to depersonalize the way you're looking at all this and de-anthropomorphize God and stop putting him into the realm of like your grandfather with a long beard on a throne somewhere, because that's obviously, probably the biggest objection I had to the Bible, was that kind of imagery. But I understand why it's there. It's there. It's a teaching tool. But if the teaching never goes beyond that, then we have a problem. The problem is that people end up being mind controlled rather than liberated. And in their mind control, they think they're liberated. Boy, they're going to have a wake-up call. I guess they don't think Revelation 2 has anything to do with them. They think they're like the Church of Philadelphia, even if they're 501c3, which is impossible, actually. It's just a logical impossibility. It just cannot be. It's like you might want it to be, but it can't be. You can't be light and dark at the same time. You can't take the positive charge and negative and fuse them together and have harmony. They repulse each other, and they tend to burn up. That's how you cause a short, right? Some anomaly, some failure in this system. And then equilibrium-wise, it starts a fire, and then it burns up, and then it's back to equilibrium again. It's totally self-regulating. So Albert Pike's vision could never be. The New World Order can never be the way they envision it, because they would not be here. Or if they were, they would have no power, because they can't have power derived from each other. Their power derives from the light. And, nature understands this, but they don't understand this. So you have the lower levels, your rulers of the earth, the wealthy people you see, like the Warren Buffetts and the Bill Gateses and whoever else, the heads of corporations. And these are lower echelon, everything I just mentioned. They have nothing to do with, the way things work. They tip their hat to it, and they have their little parameters they can operate in, and they're compartmentalized. All these people, the people I mentioned, and multiply that to everybody else. So nobody knows what's going to happen, and they're all plotting and plotting and plotting. It seems the Bible is so true when it says the wicked plot all day long, against the righteous. All day long they plot and devise. Just like, Obama's plotted to get rid of the Republican Party, he wants that to be his legacy. But it violates a law in nature. Now let me apply to terrestrial things. Okay, do you get that though? That it seems Christians really complain and they dream of a day when these awful people will be, they're so bad they need to all be thrown in hell. And that's just not, you're failing to understand they're people, they're made that way. You know, just like you're made your way. And God made all things. And God said, if you try to lay a hand on Cain, no matter what evil, he's a murderer, he's a liar, he's a vagabond, he's a criminal. You know, how's he going to live but to steal? You try to take him out, it's a curse sevenfold. I don't care how righteous you are. Now that's a verse that should stick out to everybody and cause everyone to stop dead in their tracks and try to realize what this means. It's not personal, you know. It's not like there's an edict from this personal old man named God. It's a law that was tried to explain. It's the same thing that is the law of, by persecuting the Christians, you spread the light all the more. By trying to eradicate the people of God, let's say, and eradicate godly things from the schools and everything, you cause it to grow all the more, but it's because then on the other side, what happens is they fade out as they get rid of the thing that actually gives them life. It's just the damnedest thing. It's connected hip and thigh. There's no way that one can eradicate the other. And if so, it would be, then there's the nihilist who wants the death of the entire organism, left, right, up, down, and the whole thing. And they're just sick of the whole thing, and they don't want to they don't want to participate. And I suppose they want to go back home, but they still are subject to God. They are not autonomous. And they think if they eradicate matter, then they could truly be free. No, they would just be subject to the law of the law. They would be subject as they are now. It'd be no different than it is now. They would be still in the same position they're in now if they get rid of all material form, which of course it's not logically possible, but say they could do that. They themselves would still be subject to the same thing they're subject to now. They would be no more or less free. Freedom becomes an irrelevant concept at that point. It just is, so it doesn't matter. So in that sense, when you look at the world, you realize, okay, so obviously God is allowing this, but not is allowing. That makes it look like it's fluid in time. It's not in time. It is the creation, if you will. And man is created, and its distribution thusly, as you know, there's light and dark, and people are made to be one thing or another. You know what I mean? They you know, when they're children, you can tell they hear the voice of the world, and they run after that, or they hear the voice of the Lord, and they recognize that language, or they recognize this language. It's a DNA thing. So there's a distribution of kinds of species of beings. And those beings operate the way they operate in equilibrium upon the earth. And there's a thing where the light is not going to stamp out the dark, and the dark can't stamp the light out because they have to coexist. The wheat and tares grow together. And when you understand this, and if you want to keep the maximum evil and keep the covering. So the decision's made now to keep the covering. In other words, all this is getting too exposed, right? We have imbalances. The more that the darkness is trying to eradicate the light, the more that the exposure via the internet and everything else of names of people who participate in these criminal things, I mean, you have a basic wall, veil that hides them, and then you have behind that the occult, children, criminality, it all kind of spiritualism, Nazism, whatever, it all kind of goes together. And usually there's a veil there that hides it. It's protected in some way. And now names of people are being thrown around the internet of, well, so-and-so was, did this, and so-and-so did that. We have eyewitnesses putting, the Pope at the scene of this, and he was drinking blood or whatever. Just stuff that just sounds insane to the mainstream. people in Disneyland would never really understand because of the levels of control they have to never see that. And never, people say, well, go ahead and conform to the world, not understanding it has to do with child sacrifice and murder and lying and criminality. They don't get it. Conform to the world means that. Oh, you may be able to get along with, because now you can all, you've got, you know what I mean, make the system work. And they don't show you that part of it. But that's what it literally means. It means you've given consent for all those things to happen. But no fretting, because it all kind of comes out in the wash in terms of equilibrium. So the soldiers of God are not going to eradicate these deep, dark, wealthy, powerful Luciferians that are doing these heinous things and running the dope trade and the human trafficking and having Christians' heads lopped off and all the rest of it. It'd be nice to just get them all, round them up, and kill them all. God's going to do that and take his vengeance. And it's like, yeah, the Bible does show a push from the dark side to eliminate the light, and then there's the snapback, and then there's the eradication. But all of it is more. It's really meant to. It's really almost a thesis about us as individuals and the struggle that we're in. To enter into the spiritual realm, to escape this situation, this kind of lockdown situation between light and dark, good and evil, all that. We need to die to self, to be in Christ, the light. And thus we escape this back and forth, round and round washing machine world we're in. But a few things about the world. It can't be eradicated. If the one side wants to get rid of the other side, then the other side grows stronger and that side will grow weaker, and then vice versa, because each side tries to do that. And it's a dance of opposites, and a collision of opposites, and a competition of opposites. But ultimately, if one won over the other, then there would be no being, there'd be no creation, there'd be no existence in this realm. So the wise man or woman, or the wise being, would say, to ensure our way of life and our power and our wealth, we must make sure these people are taken care of, these people exist, or whatever, rather than lopping their heads off. We need Christianity. We need to honor God. We need to have these institutions that honor God, because we need them to be growing and whatever. Because then, of course, the wheat and the tare, then they are covered. To make this go away, i.e. exposing everything and ruining it all with the internet that we can't get control of, we must bring back some form of decorum and virtue and education, and we must have a renaissance of some sort. This whole ISIS thing is going nowhere. I know that we created it, and we're and it's kind of like a little bit of a Lawrence of Arabia thing going on there. But you know what? We're going to just pull the plug and burn the assets to the ground, and we have to bring back this sense of honor, tradition, pride, whatever. Whether it be the military, whether it be education, whether it be citizens, whatever. Which then naturally stops, people from becoming malcontents and then pulling back the curtain or whatever. Otherwise, the more that we prosecute and persecute and try to get our way, which the brute beasts do, which is Obama and company are kind of like brute beasts. They don't think. They don't understand. It's more like they're just ignorant. They don't understand the way it works. It works, meaning reality works. There's no historical precedent for it being anything other than a struggle constantly, but always tending toward equilibrium. So the rubber band, they go, well, it's been stretched so far toward the evil side. And so many things done, including like somehow, with our tax money in some way, it's funding people killing Christians. And it's like, well, that's one of the, the devil's tricks. He likes to get you to do things you never otherwise ought to do, which would be an affront to God. So you can go to God and say, so the adversary is saying, well, look what this one's doing, and it's all part of that kind of game. But again, I have to depersonalize it and demythologize it. When we think of a devil physically going to God and then God sitting there on a throne, we are falling into a trap, if you will, of a mythological trap where we're forming a mythology out of the whole thing, rather than dealing with it, say, as a more of a science, if you will. And no, the Lord deals with us as a person. I mean, I understand that, and He'll deal with us as like a human, like a grandfather, like a wise elder that we could, feel comfort with and all that. But that's, for us, that you know what I mean, in the hopes that eventually we will grow up more and be able to see the way everything is. Anyway, so this is why, and at times, it goes so far the other way. Like World War II was a great example of it's just so far to the evil side and then snapping back. And then there was this sense of honor and pride. There was a decor. I have letters from my uncle from Guadalcanal where he was embattled there, and I have pictures of bombs going off and things, black and white photos he took, and of literally just surrounded by battle after battle. And then they had malaria. He was a Marine, real tough, young, 21, 22, something like that, captain. Anyway, but the letters that he would write home were very, very, there was a respect and a formality there that we seem to have lost in this, in the classroom now. It's all disrespect and a disrespect of history, and alterations of history and a dissing of any in all tradition. This is classic, from the left has jumped the shark, and these are all leftists that have let this happen, and only leftists. Why they have is because they envision some new utopia that would be, it's the same thing as the revolution in China, the same thing as the Bolshevik. There's no rhyme or reason. It's just barbarianism, to devolve everything into barbarianism, get rid of all cultures and traditions, all sense of history, all sense of anything, blur all the lines, blur the borders, blur it all. So there's just an amorphous mass of human stomachs screaming, I want more, 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 whatever. And to descend humanity into utter stupidity and a total waste of creation, because that upsets God, in their mind, or what? Well, maybe not even in their mind, but I mean, they're made to do that. And when that gets pushed to a certain limit, all of this works together: the diseducation on purpose in the schools, the destruction of the health of humans through engineering of the planet, or re-engineering the planet and the food supply, the destruction of the genome of various plants, animal species, humans, whatever. And all those things, are destructive, and these would be destroyers. And then it snaps back the other way. It's like at some point they go, you know what? I can see where this is going. And if we keep going with our plan to implement the 3 world wars and do this exactly whatever, I've calculated now that as we move forward, we fade, and we move backward, we become more real. It's like, yeah. So thus and therefore. If there's any wisdom in this regard, then the idea would be to understand the law and then work with it. Understand the consequences of this this push, which admittedly the underside, admittedly the one side of the power and the wealth and whatnot that wants to have this utopian society. The other abrogation of law comes from the idea that, well, we reap what we sow. So if you are sowing destruction of others, and destruction of the light that you need to live, then you will not have a utopia from your deeds. Quite the opposite. If the goal is to bring barbarism in, which is what the Muslim stands for, the Muslim barbarians, and they were very successful time to time throughout history. And let's say they allow this thing to go, and it takes over Europe, it takes over everything, conquers everyone, puts everyone in a state of barbarism, kills as many people that are infidels or not going along with the mind control or whatever it is they want to do. And at some point, then they get stopped, and then there's a pushback. Because of the law of equilibrium, there has to be a pushback. So, now that they see, perhaps, and I'm just guessing here, but as far as getting an inkling or a nudging that they've pulled the plug is something that would be unique that you would hear in the field of all these people. It may take years for this, for the reality of the program as it is to filter into all aspects of life to where you can see it in front of your face. But the one thing you can look for is for the eradication of if they pull the program on the ISIS thing, which is all part of this kind of Albert Pike kind of, use the Muslims to kill the Jews and the Christians, and then you go ahead and use then you eliminate them. You tell them they're going to have a caliphate, and then you kill them all, and then you're left with the Luciferians, and their lovely Luciferian world can't exist. Law of equilibrium can't do it. There has to be both sides. There has to be an equilibrium balance. The wise ruler would understand that, and they have throughout history, actually. From time to time, not all the time, but this group that's in now are uneducated, so they don't know. They're uneducated in the sense they may have read some books, but they didn't comprehend them, so they're uneducated. They may have some letters after their name, but they don't understand the significance of those letters, so they're uneducated. They may use the Bible to tout this or that, as Obama did by pointing out a few inconsistencies and the Levitical laws of killing witches and whatnot. So to kind of mock the Bible and God, I suppose in a way to promote his Quran. The Quran is I remember studying the Quran, and it's very poetical, and it's got good things in it, and all the religions have their good points, but there are also inconsistencies. Anyway, be that as it may, we've all forgotten, and in this little community we're in, we have all but forgotten God in the equation, and reap what you sow. Certain basic principles of existence that we deal with every day. But we seem to always say, oh no, they're going to take, it's all over. And that's where you get these false prophecies and false prophets from, where they constantly keep going over and over and over and over, figuring, well, eventually they'll be right. At some point, they're going to let the nukes fly, and then I'll finally be vindicated on the day of my death. They're missing. That's not even the paradigm that is going on. In other words, they're missing the whole point. They're missing half of life because they're not seeing it for what it is. They're not seeing it through by using their brains and logic and seeing this discovering this balance that also, you're physicists and you're scientists and you're biologists. We should all be seeing this. It should all be pointing to the amazing thing about God. It should all be bringing us to our knees before the Lord in awe. Because of if you could just get your mind around, the design and the intention and all of it, you can't. It's just so mind-boggling that you just go, oh my God, Lord, you are all. And then I recognize that I am In him, he in me, I'm there. Somehow I'm perceiving him in this creation as just of what it is, and I'm so mind boggled. And in that, I am now worshiping God because I am seeing what it is. And I could not be worshiping, if I didn't have genuine awe, which is the form of respect and worship that the Lord expects. And in thus understanding, I say, praise you, God. I give it up. I submit. I'm submissive. Only when I submit can there be any kind of wedding ceremony and feast. Can there be only in submission do I live. Only in submission do I truly live, because you see, the power that I have comes from the source. I don't need it filtered through slaying of beings as sacrifices, because I go direct. I don't need to take some innocent life of Bambi or a child or whatever when I have direct. I don't need to do the Mayan tango and start throwing hearts and skulls and whatnot down the bloody pyramid because I need the crops to grow. I'm right here with God, and if they don't grow, then I have to. Then God must help me to understand. Now, there's been some 15 odd hours that never made it up, and the Lord has done what He said. He's pulling me away from a lot of explaining about all that. I have a lot of pod because of the we have a whole series of things that we're doing with the music that I have to have energy for. It's I can integrate these pods into the studio a little more, but this one I think was one I had the unction and the nudging to do, but then I don't know, because a lot of times He pulls them. When they don't go up there, there's no physical reason. There's no reason it shouldn't go up there. It just gets pulled, and I don't expect you to understand that, because most people don't believe that God is supernatural and does things like that. But it's true. There's this supernatural thing to it, and part of it's maybe a protection mechanism that maybe you say something you shouldn't have, but this message today, it's good to go. What does that look like? Okay, if they pull the program, well, that's big. That would mean that over the next few years you'd see things change pretty much 180 degrees from where they are now. In terms of the hurt, yes, there'd be a lot of hurt there'd be a lot of violence, yeah. There'd be a lot of, but hey, they want to bring John Wayne back, They're bringing Lassie back. They understand the need for formality, for vous rather than tu. We really have become so disrespectful and so tawdry in our dealings that we, unless we want to see it all barbaric and destroy the human race and all that, but the very top people, they understand that their own destruction will be sown in that, and their own children, and they have children, they have a vested interest as well, and I don't think they want a population of, it's not really up to them, because they realize that this whole thing has been guided by something bigger than them, bigger than all of us. And so the plug is pulled, so that you would see, ISIS eliminated, which they could do in 5 minutes. The only reason, but the people, the lower echelons, they're still going to be fighting this war and trying to bring about their totality. They actually believe that they could bring about some harmonious sort of world by the way they're operating, which shows their ignorance and shows their lack of understanding of the way things work in reality. That's all. So they're going to keep on fighting it out and going the way they're going to try to go, like eradicating the Republicans and eradicating the Christians and eradicating all this stuff. And what are they left with? A sludge. Who wants to be here anyway? Who wants to hang around them anyway? Nobody. They don't know anything. They have no appreciation. They have no respect for anything. So well, there's no point. It's just amorphous, nonsense, babble. Doesn't matter. These people also have children, but the more hardcore ones don't care. They just soon sacrifice their children for the greater good. But the ones higher than them, and again, like the Obamas and the White House and the military and whatnot, the military will also be, swinging back toward some sort of decorum. And, there's a sense of honor, tradition, all that. You might say all the wars are fake, it's all BS, but there was this sense of respect and honor and decorum and courage and all those virtues too. You see, too many of you look at just the negative and you don't see the positive. You don't understand how, in me it's light and dark too. In bodies of humans, it's light and dark. And then people caught in between and people confused and whatnot. In everything though, it tends toward this equilibrium. None of us is beyond the laws of nature, not one. And becoming machines just means that people, they'll die and they'll have an icon of themselves as a machine. They're still dead. So it doesn't really matter. If they could have made that bridge, they could have done it. But even then, they're subject to the laws of physics and equilibrium. And eventually, every knee eventually bows. Let me just put it that way. Everyone eventually gives it up to the Lord. They see somehow, even in their evil doing, it's a pathway to seeing God. So what it means is, no, one side's not going to eliminate the other. This whole idea of vengeance, the blood crying up from the ground, and the Lord finally avenges in the end. It's not like there's this guy that's going to come down with as a super warrior and avenge something. It's more like, in my way of looking at it, it's more like that ignorance will be conquered. Vengeance is the elimination of ignorance, and because vengeance without exaltation is tawdry. It's not good. Then you just have the Islamo-fascist pigs or whatever. That's just basic barbarism, 101. They don't care about anything. There's nothing matters, and they just, human life means nothing. And it's and when that happens, of course, that affects their soul. That British guy that is dressed up in his black ninja outfit, which by the way shows him to be a coward. He cuts the guy's head off. The guy doesn't even try to run or anything. He just sits there and lets his head be cut off. That's going to affect his soul negatively. He will, in essence, in what he's doing, fade out. He will cease to be, and already has, from what I can see. He doesn't really exist as a human being. He has no aspirations. He's dead inside. He's part of the dead. But see, in the sense, it's just that's God operating right there. But it's a law that's intact as well. It's hard to make people see this. Because I know when we're in trouble, we go, "Oh, God, please help me!" And we look up, don't we? Like he's out there somewhere. And that's just wrong. He's in all things, but he is the ultimate author of these things. And I ask him, well, why, Lord, do you allow this evil and whatnot? And the answer is, there would be no existence, there would be no comprehension of the good, there would be no understanding. This is important to go through this. And then I understand. And then there's the need to detach from, like the horror of, they're cutting heads off, they're doing this, all these horrors. Eventually it's like, it's ultimately I can see it's, what we perceive, it's so important and so awful. In the end and ultimately is not awful at all. It's a process. And it's got nothing to do with human bodies, nothing to do with any one thing. It's got nothing to do with the material realm ultimately. But that's a little bit esoteric and beyond the dealing with it. You just need to be at peace with this. Cain was protected from anyone, even the righteous, getting even, because it was about equilibrium. So they're not, going to be eradicated, and, we're not going to be eradicated. You're going to have the light and the dark, the wheat and the tares, and that's the way it's going to be for this incarnation. And thus, all parts are necessary for the whole to operate. If I scream at the darkness and say, I don't like you, go away, then I would cease to exist. Theoretically and philosophically. And I think once you understand that, because I see so many people that are so the beheading. I mean, I know I don't like to look at those things, literally, and I know that's why I left Facebook, because the images there were too much for me. I don't know how you can take it; it's too much for me. I mean, even still images that as you're scrolling through, I got to the point where I couldn't even go down the news feed anymore, because it was just like one horrible thing after another. It's like really affecting my outlook. It's like, well, what's the point of even being here then? Now I did see this. I did, kind of delve into this beheading. But when you tell me that, he's beheading a journalist, it's like I immediately know one thing. It's a stage setup, and he's talking to Obama, which means that Obama's, part of the setup. And so I'm just looking at that like, same old. It's all ridiculous. This is just theater, and I've detached myself from the actual head being lopped off, and for the sad death of the journalist. I'm sorry about that. That's, he's in a better place now. But the whole thing was staged as a propaganda. But there's all kinds of side. There's a side that wants to take out ISIS and have a big war. Then there's a side that wants to let ISIS overrun everything and put all of us in chains. There's a side that wants to kill all the Christians. There's a side that wants to save the Christians. There's all these sides and all these people arguing all over the place. The left wants to kill all the Christians and add to that all the white people, and who else don't they like? They might as well put guns to their heads because they're all white themselves, and they came from Christian backgrounds, many of them, so they might as well kill themselves too. They should have the courage to do that, but of course they don't, because they're cowards, because that's why they hide behind the skirts of mommy, which is big government. Take all those guns away. How dare those nasty people grow organic vegetables? I'll bet you even a lot of them start returning, like at Whole Foods, they're returning to GMO foods and right, and non-organic vegetables are becoming more and more prominent. I wouldn't be surprised if they turn away from organic vegetables and embrace GMO foods. I know it wouldn't. They used to be the vegetarians and the vegans and everything. I wouldn't be surprised if they go that way. That's just the way. You know what I mean? Out of philosophical bent. And if you give them everything they want, they would end up having nothing except misery. And they're already miserable. As far as the people on the true Christians and the true conservatives or the true libertarians and all that revere, that are, basically living moral lives, living decent lives, it's all blurred by the fact that there's a lot of infiltrators, who are just trying to corrupt the whole thing and everything, corrupting everything they can on earth. But again, it snaps to equilibrium, because it always does. And hopefully it won't be after a horrible world war, although I can make a case for that. We're at we've been at World War. World War II never ended. We're still in a state of emergency. Okay? The Great Depression never ended. We never have been liberated financially. It's always been this. You can make that case very nicely. It's perpetual war, folks. But what I mean is the plug is pulled in the sense that, the program, as it were, is So I don't know what that means, but you'll see the effects of that over the next few years. It's not going to be an immediate policy change, but the people that were trying to implement this faux-topia, not a utopia, but a faux-topia, need to understand that even if they got their way, they would have never achieved it. Because what they want is not humanly possible anyway. It's like wanting the sky to be purple or something. It would have never happened. And I don't know. This is what happens when people get too big for their britches. The plug is pulled on Obama, and he's part of their program. And so when they pull the program, what happens in your spy novels, right? Assets get burned. And so I wouldn't want to be any of those. But they will not fare well because obviously their bosses have have cut them loose. And I think that's what, if you see fear in their eyes or you see a confusion, I think that's the confusion you're saying. That they were there, they thought they had it made. And now you'll see the push to take out ISIS, to exterminate all of them. Don't even bother with the trial. It's just like, right? And I guess that'll be World War III. But it'll be far different from the one you were envisioning, or the sort of. They tried to get this thing going with Russia, and the thing about Russia is Russia is more in common with godly people, say, than the United States at this point. I mean, the United States is just basically, you just have barbarians inside the gate. They're barbarians. That's what I meant by they're ignorant. They may have letters after their name from education, but they have no education. They have no sense of history. They have no, or they would understand where they are. They're basically in deer in the headlight land right now. I told you Obama's good. Hey, Obama hasn't really fallen. He's gonna fall. He's down in popularity, and he looks ridiculous, of course. And I wouldn't want to be him. I actually just feel really sorry for him because all the mistakes he made of being arrogant and being, flippant, feeling that he was above it all and all that have just come to bear that most people, including Democrats, have all turned on him. I mean, they won't do it publicly, but they've kind of had enough. Like when he talks, people turn the TV off. That the last speech he gave was some sort of platitude type oriented thing of the future belongs to people who build, not tear down. These very broad, idiotic statements, showing him to be a total moron. I mean, how anybody could? I just feel sorry. Jimmy Carter had a lot more substance than him. I mean, this has just been and become a sham. Rush Limbaugh thinks that Obama actually is really smart and he's playing all this. He's like 4 or 5 steps ahead in the chess game. And I disagree with Rush Limbaugh completely. I don't believe that this guy knows where he is at this point. And I believe that he's being manipulated by others who are advising him this way and that way in very contradictory ways because they have no sense of history, no sense of everything every day is an emergency, just trying to get through that day in the news cycle. There's no follow through. Like, okay, let's just take the Ukraine. There should have been more follow through there. If he wants to have a war with Russia, then, but then it's on to something else. It's on to something else. It's this crisis. Now it's Ferguson. There's never more than 1 or 2 days where there's any kind of, right? And so nothing gets done as a result. I don't think we should invade the Ukraine. I'm just, for George Soros and his buddies, and the top Satanists and whatnot. I don't think we should do that. But, governments have been known to do things a lot worse than that in the name of profit. Governments work for, the wealthy. And then, well, I need to comment on Ferguson because you're all watching that in the news. I've been watching and I've been looking kind of over. Trish has really been involved in what's going on there on the ground and the false flag nature of it and the fact they're trying to set it up as a psyop to bring about a race war and martial law and all the rest of it. They feel somehow that with martial law and I can tell you that even if they get kind of a limited martial law by this, and then certain cities that act up based on this guy Darren Wilson, if he goes free because he, was found to have acted, properly, and the grand jury releases him, which, based on the evidence I've seen, the guy, it's a hard call, but they're saying if the guy goes free, that's it. They're going to burn the city to the ground. And I know that the Obama administration and Holder and the rest of them are salivating at that idea because they believe that if they burn the country to the ground, they can build it back where it'll be more fair for them, where the white people will be the slaves, and then they'll be, it's that kind of thing that there's nothing you white people can do. You're just a target just because, there's nothing you can do. It's all your fault. Someone has to pay. And the idea is, but you had it miserable too. I know a lot of you white people have had it miserable, just like you black people and whatever other color you are. White and black and all the colors should not be, we shouldn't even be talking about that. What we should be doing is uniting together, because there's a lot of people in the Ferguson thing. There was a lot of agent provocateur, which means they're being busted and shipped in. Same thing as the immigration sham, which is all being done by the communist left. And it's all communism. What you're seeing is Marxism. This is what they do. They did this in China. They did this in Russia. Now they don't want to do it here. But they're getting blowback. Not going to work here. They're just wanting this country destroyed, and they're salivating to get it done. And it's weird watching a president who hates you, who hates the country, who hates you, who's just there to cause the collapse. And that's his entire purpose. Then to watch a guy like Bill O'Reilly, I mean, imagine the insult to my eyes, who's saying he believes Obama's a patriot. And I'm like, I don't even know what planet I'm on. I mean, I know he did this for Lee Harvey Oswald to make sure there's a single gun narrative in killing Kennedy. And I know but I mean, to say a guy like Obama is a patriot is sort of like saying Satan is God. It's almost like on that level. I mean, it's so obvious to anybody that the Obama administration is anti-American, and they believe the country was founded on and stolen, and therefore doesn't belong to the people that are here, and needs to fundamentally be changed, and basically burnt to the ground, and symbolically and every other way, and be built back up the right way that's equitable. But really, it just becomes thugland, where it's just the few thugs. And the sad thing about that kind of mentality, it's barbarism. In other words, you're dealing with people with a lack of education, a lack of respect for history, a lack of respect for God, lack of respect for themselves, to bring themselves up, to consider the great ideas. They will also likewise want to burn all the books of the Renaissance and everything that came after the Renaissance and even before. They'll want to burn the history books. They'll want to burn the sense of culture. They'll want to burn the sense of beauty. They'll want to burn the sense of everything. They'll want to turn the genome upside down. Obama is a huge fan of Monsanto and and probably a huge fan of geoengineering, being able to bring weather modification and droughts and severe storms and to hurt people so that the government can come in and look like a savior. I mean, would they descend to that level just to aggrandize their own egos? When you're barbaric, all you have is your ego. That's your life, is your ego. Barbarians are destructive as much to themselves. The only time we ascend, we have a glimpse of the realms beyond, is when we have education, when we have like really good studies of history and the Bible and philosophies and all the Buddhist sutras and all, to consider them all in the light of truth rather than one thing against another. Again, when I look at Islamos, I look at them as they're very dedicated, but every time they speak, they're stupid. They're just the dumbest people in the world. They're just like automaton robots with no soul, cutting the next guy's head off. But if you cut people's heads off, you fade, meaning your spirit, what makes you you, fades out. It's a law of nature. If we understood those laws, well, we wouldn't hurt each other so much. But at the same time, when we have an idealistic attitude of, all or nothing, good versus evil, we got to get rid of these evil. You're not going to get rid of the evil doers. There's going to be evil in the world, and it will be protected until till the creations, till it morphs into something else. But for now, it is the way it is. And the light and the dark, are both, I hate to say this, but both necessary. I know it's really hard to wrap your head around that, but just consider for a moment this. Without sadness, you will feel no elation. Pain and suffering, you can't feel the joy untold. Without hate, you're not going to feel the intensity of love and the beauty of love and the more powerful nature of love. So it's an experiential thing. It's also kind of a learning thing, And so I would advise people not to be too caught up in, I don't even look at myself as on one side or another. I just want to be with the Lord and just use, going to Him for counsel in whatever form that takes. And then, proceeding likewise with that counsel and having to rely on Him, completely. And that's all I can do. I don't really want anything. As far as the world's concerned, it's like I recognize there's danger out there. I recognize there's stalking out there. There's people watching each other. There's people watching, and they're looking for a weakness. They're probing to find if they can get a way in to manipulate somebody or to steal something from somebody or to hurt somebody. I can't, that to me just seems so, can you imagine there are Christians living their lives this way? Watching each other, controlling each other, looking for vulnerabilities, and just that makes them like a little more than con artists, and criminal and petty criminals. I don't know about you, but that kind of lifestyle to me would mean a wasted life, that wasted opportunity to experience things on a much higher plane. Things that can only be experienced in this physical realm, because without these opposites, we can't experience the intensity of these things. So it's a gift, folks. In Buddhism, it says, the premise is the beginning tenet of Buddhism, the opener, if you will, the oeuvre, is all life is suffering, and then ultimately there's an end to suffering, which is right ethics. In other words, there's an ethical that you can, through good works and good attitude and good mindedness, and through a loving spirit, through kindness and compassion, you can turn it around. We can turn it around. And so the purpose of Buddhism is good. It's good. There are good things in the Quran about ethics and things like that. There's good things in the Bible. There's good wisdom of Lao Tzu and the whole Taoist movement and the various Buddhisms that came through Chan in China and then Zen in Japan regarding compassion and ethics and humility and considering the higher things. I love the religious studies of comparative religions when it deals, not the practice therein and all the corruption that comes in, but dealing with the philosophies and the reasons they came into being so that man could experience the higher octaves of life, the true purpose of life, to have total appreciation and not living in fear, not living in degradation, not living as barbarians, not living as uneducated. When I say educated, I mean the capability of considering these amazing questions of existence, ascending through whatever means, a book, a lecture, a work of art, it doesn't matter. But just, storytelling, but able to consider those things through those media, and to be able to see a simple thing and be lifted in the spirit into such tremendous delight about it all because of being educated. I suppose when I say educated, I mean learning the appreciation of others who have gone that path, and then reading their works and understanding, what's possible. Right now, we don't even know anymore what's possible. We seem to, all be about our stomachs and our libidos. It just seems there's, that's it. We're just, angry stomachs and angry libidos, wanting more of whatever it is, and seeming to forget about about all these questions, about all this this wonderment and beauty and amazement. I'm amazed that you can have it at this level and be able to consider this level of intensity and evil around us, and just consider it and take it to the Lord and say, Lord, what does this all mean? Where is this going? Is it just all going to be bad? We're all going to be just stomped out. I feel like David crying out to you, Lord, have you forgotten about me? If you don't make a move here, we're all going to be dead, Lord. Right? And then, and it may, and let me just say this, it may go to some sort of horrific, launching of nukes or doing some horrible thing before it gets better, or it may just get, change. But I think you'll see it if you look at the policies on ISIS and you start seeing the way the world's moving. It's moving in ways that nobody could have ever predicted just a month ago or even 2 months ago. And remember when I was saying about Ukraine, I mean, it's still there. They're still banning it about, but remember how intense it got, and then it was like sort of diffused, kind of like Syria, but Syria is still there, but it's sort of diffused. Well, isn't it amazing how those things diffuse when they're so definitive at the moment? Such a push. Have you noticed how they, with the geoengineering, how it's been a little bit more inconsistent as things get more tense in the world? I wonder if anyone else has noticed that. I have noticed that. Like there's not much follow through. Like today we have follow through for 20 minutes and then we're on to another topic, Ferguson. And then that'll go for a while and then, well, wait, so don't forget about Ukraine. We got to get that World War III going. And well, why? And then the plug is pulled, and so all these people that are different assets, especially if they've lived criminal lives, I don't care what institution they work for. If anyone who's familiar with the way the whole thing works, like you don't have to be like a Jason Bourne fan to really understand. It's even much worse than that in terms of when assets are burned. They're burned. How about Burn Notice? Remember that one? It was on TV. Jeffrey Donovan, the actor, he also was the producer of the series. Great 4, 5, 6 year series that basically dealt with a spy who they burned. And we burn assets all the time. Where Benghazi was burned assets, but we were caught with our hands in the cookie jar. But we do that all the time. We've been funding both sides of every conflict and making right because it's more profit. Right, we've been bad, and the cynical ones are saying, "I'm going to make America bad, so America has bad karma," and that's not going to be. You see, the Lord will not be manipulated in that way. You can't manipulate equilibrium that way either. So it's going to be very interesting. But just this, my contribution to this whole thing is, I believe the plug has been pulled and the program canceled. Okay, so. However you take that, and it's because wiser heads have prevailed and understand that what I'm talking about is, if you really look at the Bible, if you really look at the story of Cain and Abel, you'll understand. You'll understand. God could have eradicated Cain. Nobody ever explained to me, and none of the textbooks ever explained to me what that meant, that God would make a seal of protection, a mark. I had to understand that, I was on my own, pondering that thing for 20, 30 years or something. I've pondered that a long time. And then I had the answer in the aspect of physics and equilibrium, and the aspect of what nature is and what being is, and and some of the laws that keep it intact, and the story of Genesis and the creation of light and dark, and the cosmogony of the world and the sustenance of the world through the Word of God. And I was able to understand then that he's talking about equilibrium here. If he didn't put a mark on Cain, and it's not even important historically whether Cain was marked or not, literally. What's important is that, he said this Cain kind of being is going to be here. And this Abel being is going to be here. Even if one, hurts the other, and vice versa. I'm sorry, I'm just not going to let him be eradicated, because I'm going to put laws in place, i.e. this curse. So apply that to the Cainites out there. And you go, they've been operating under protection. Well, whose protection other than God? God's the only protector. Satan cannot protect you from God. That's ridiculous. That they teach that in church. I know. That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. That's one of the reasons I just walked out, because I couldn't take it anymore. They were just trying to totally mind control me and totally get me to believe all this stuff that had, and once I got to the rapture thing, I was already gone. I was like, yeah, okay. And the thing that really kind of drove me from it all, and then the Catholics are different. I didn't sit much in the Catholic Church, but not so much emphasis on sola scriptura and the accuracy of the Bible and all that. The Bible for me is 100% accurate. And so is the Lotus Sutra, and so is, in other words, I hate to inform people that, not to create idolatry through a book, but there's some people that hide in the Bible who are, they're hiding from God while being in the Bible. But they don't want God. They just want the Bible, but they want their own understanding about the Bible, but they don't want God. And they go around scripture browbeating people with scriptures, scripture thumping people. And, anything that, I remember there was one friend I had on Facebook a long time ago that anything I would say that was, she would consider this entire talk today complete, utter evil. I just want, and so would many people, because what I say today actually threatens their belief system in some way. But really it doesn't. It doesn't take away Jesus, doesn't take away the cross, doesn't take away anything. We should not be afraid. And if the Lord wants me to consider it a little bit differently next time, I have room to change. I have room to contradict. I have room to, to change my thinking as it changes, as I get to know more. I have room to speak again on a podcast and say, now I'm really seeing it like this. There is no absolute, definitive absolute here, except God is, So, I understand something about His Word, and something what's the point of knowing the Word of God if I know nothing about existence? If I don't know anything about, God's laws, what's the point in studying Scripture? They're supposed to teach me all those things. So I understand why Cain had that mark, and I understand why we have a certain light and dark. In other words, and you go, well, it looks like it's 80% dark and about 20% light right now. Well, that just indicates to me that then there'll be a snap back to equilibrium, and I believe that the first oeuvre, I love that word today, oeuvre, French word meaning opener. like hors d'oeuvre. It's the opening of the hour, right? It's the opening cocktail hour. An oeuvre. An oeuvre is also a first work, right? Or an opening work, an opening act, the oeuvre. Okay, so it would be, this see how they deal with ISIS. As far as the Ferguson thing, I've got the feeling, and this is just a feeling, and it's not. Don't confuse me with any. I don't call myself a prophet. No, I could say at times I may be prophetic or psychic or whatever you want to, sensitive, clairvoyant. I do have that. That's kind of a curse, by the way. People would envy that when I could, have accuracy on things, and I'm like, I don't think you understand. Would you like to be in a subway or an elevator packed with people, hearing everyone's dirty thoughts? I didn't think so. So, no, I'm not. I don't have that like I used to. I had that a lot more when I was younger. It's now if I need to tune into something, I kind of get it. I don't really need to tune. I don't need to hear chatter. With people and their ups, their downs, their usually it's disapproval of me, and so I can see I'm rejected before I even talk, and I'm talking to them, and I can see they don't approve. I guess it's the disapproval I get, especially when I do talks like this. It's a tremendous amount of disapproval, and no, I've had people say, "Well, I'm not gonna, I can't be seen with you," and because this other guy that's a big radio personality, he said if I go on your show or whatever, he's going to ban me from his, and plus he said you were a Satanist, and I'm like, you've got to be kidding. This is like, and I started laughing because this is like, this is not high school. This is more like kindergarten. These people that are your Christian leaders are operating on a level of just nasty children with no maturity, no wisdom, no nothing. It's all just like a cheap used car salesman, snake oil, whatever, calling themselves prophets. Not too many people actually call themselves prophets these days, but they have the prophecy conferences. You're not supposed to call yourself any kind of prophet. That's why I love that song. Even though it's my song, I really love it. It's I like it when I get to kind of be dramatic and do a little acting, and I talk about stuff, and then I say that I'm still here, prophet. Yes, I'm still here 30 years later, prophet. And I was just thinking this morning about someone that was saying, if you know someone's, it's like they're on a power trip. If you know someone's a prophet, you better sit at their feet and listen to everything they say. I'm like, go F yourself. Who you're trying to prop yourself up as God or something. You're not Jesus. You're not the way. God is the way. But I mean, they were trying to do that, and now they're doing UFOs. They can't. Seriously, it's the UFO thing because it's a lot more lucrative than being the prophet. But they tried to be like the prophet. They tried to promote themselves as the prophet, through radio and whatnot. But like I say in my song, don't you have to be right at least like once a year? You got to come up with something like once a year, and then the rest of the time you can coast, go on interviews and stuff, and tell people what you think is going to happen. But you need at least one hit a year to be. Best thing to do, in my opinion, is just forget about the whole concept of prophet and prophecy, and just make it more like, okay, I feel like this is like, when I say this thing about the plug is pulled and all that, that's what I'm feeling right now. That's what I'm getting. It doesn't mean I'm a prophet. It doesn't mean that it's prophetic. It doesn't mean it's, I think, this is coming from the Spirit, and I believe it's coming from this place of truth. I believe it's coming from the Lord. But I I don't know. I don't want to say that with certainty because and I don't need anyone to establish I'm very happy being wrong. I mean, I hope I'm right, for my own personal reasons, but I don't need to be right, you see. There's been a lot of right stuff, but I don't need to be right. I don't have any kind of reputation to defend. I'm telling you this is, and let's just put it in the realm of guesswork. This is something I got and I'm sharing it with you. Program's canceled. And over the next few years, obviously you'll see more what that means. Meanwhile, this whole totalitarian barbarian thing is raging on, whether it's Ferguson, ISIS, we forgot about Ukraine, forgot about Syria, but don't worry, we're coming back to it, right? It's all keeps swirling around as they keep trying hither and yon to get the thing done. The problem they have right now, that would be the Pentagon, that would be NATO, that would be the UN, that would be a lot of people who are on the dole there, on the dole to the big guys, that are invisible. The problem they have is, it's like the war's over, but they're still running around the battlefield. They're still going to prosecute you're not going to, it's just going to take time. Just like it took time to get this thing. This was like 50 years in the making. And now, they really wanted this to be like China because they feel China is like a mecca. You know what I mean? We'd have the perfect business climate, a corporate climate. If it was like China where they throw themselves out the window to commit suicide in the factories. But for them, it's the perfect corporate model. I remember there was this guy that got really rich off selling shoes, and he had them all made in China, and he used to take trips back and forth to China. He told me, the people love being taken care of by the government. They love totalitarianism. And he was, talking about them like little children. And I just, and then this would be, a mucky muck tied in with other people that are multi-zillionaires. And that's the way they think. That's the way they talk. He made, Lord knows how much money, but at least 100 million. Maybe he made $1 billion. I don't know. I haven't seen him in the Forbes, but he may have made a lot of money. I take Forbes. I keep my hand on the pulse of what's going on. I like to see what, there's early billionaires. Hey, you guys use Dropbox? That guy's like has become a billionaire, a near billionaire. Just had an idea, real simple idea, but it's really practical, serving the needs of others. I'd suggest you do the same. If you've got an idea of something that you can do that would make people's lives a little easier, that's what you do. That was the American way. That's what I used to love about America. You could do, kind of what you wanted. I have mine in the arts. I've got, things I create are useless to other people, but I have the right to do that. I love that too. Well, useless meaning invisible. No one's going to codify my work. No one's going to take these and glean what's good from them and put them into literature or something that something to be. If they would take the better parts and especially where I've proven, like I have proven that, like in a court of law, that the way of Cain, if you will, the way of the world, the way of the conformist to the world system, their lives usually end in tragedy, and I'm sorry for that. I really am. But when we were kids, they were so much touting it as like the ultimate, and they became like, they became cool in high school and all that stuff, and but they took the bait, and it's like, they sold their souls, to get to be cool and to. And it's like, and then now where are they? They're nowhere. I mean, I think the saddest thing in the world is I saw pictures of high school reunion. Of course, I didn't go because I didn't graduate. I had to, I was troubled. I finally graduated a different way in a different school, but I mean, my school, I was troubled. And but I've seen pictures of the reunion of what my class would have been, and it's really sad. It's. You don't see masters of the universe like they thought. And I guess every generation or every group goes through the same thing. And like I say, with the funerals that I've gone to, especially my dad's, that was really sad to see his partners, his old business partners tell me they were broke and that the whole thing went up in smoke. And they're just now kind of desperate and not knowing what to do because they're old. And fully intact too, not caught up in a spirit and caught up in being a robot or being, being like a sock puppet. They were just like right there with their problems in their flesh, having to deal with it. And almost kind of like, the whole thing turned out to be a sham. It's like, I know. And we've proven that. I've had other people defending the conformianity thing and saying that, this is how men and women get along. I'm like, how in the world do they get along? And what I offer as my proof, you moron, is that this world is my proof that you don't get along. If there was an intervention by amazing amounts of angels and the Lord and everything else, and constantly, in various ways, various ways that don't have to involve humanization of it, there wouldn't be anything left here anyway. When people sow to the devil or give consent, and are conformed, they are giving consent to the evil that they eschew, that they hate. They're also giving consent to do with them what you want. They're just slaves. And I don't believe that the human spirit wants to be enslaved. To see people in America voluntarily enslave themselves for a little bit better job or something, a little bit better pay, and then of course that dwindles a few years later, unless you start, doing really bad things out there and getting rewarded for it, being in the club, if you will. I'm kind of like, that's slavery too, because no one's, you're always looking over your shoulder and no one's ever comfortable. It's all just this game of want, just running after everything. And look where we are now. These people with the big loud voices back then mocking and laughing how they had it made and we're all idiots, they're not laughing now. They're crying. And these people that, that they wonder, well, but don't you want to be somebody? I was like, no, I don't want to be, quote, somebody in your little game. That's being nothing as far as I'm concerned. And I don't need to be acknowledged by the recording industry. I don't need to be acknowledged by, one guy asked me, and he was like this fake Christian guy from Albuquerque and whatever, he's, studio guy, whatever. He goes, well, aren't you in the family of musicians from LA? I go, no, I'm not in Satan's family. And he got really, we just hit it off like oil and water. It did not work. But no, I'm in God's family. Well, I'm a Christian too. Oh, really? Why aren't we brethren then? I mean, let's put it this way. One of us is lying. One of us is telling the truth. One of us is going to burn in hell. One of us is going to be multidimensional and eternal. One of us is right and one of us is wrong. But we are not the same. Okay? Never think we're the same, because we're not. But, I would agree with you that one is right, one is wrong. And it all has to do with the dark to light, light to dark, what we started with in the book of Genesis. One of us is in the darkness, pretending to be in the light. The other's in the light. Period. But the idea that we're brethren just because we say Jesus or pray in Jesus' name, the worker of iniquity, whom Jesus rejects, are simply the conformed to the world versus being conformed to Christ. But I admit I'm a bondservant of Christ. That is, I'm not free in that sense being autonomous. I don't want to be and I never could be. I depend on him. But the idea that just because you're under a label of Christian means you're brethren is ridiculous. And Jesus proved it in Matthew 7. But the most important thing is to understand this. The term worker of iniquity comes up throughout the Old Testament and then in the New Testament with respect to Jesus. It's important that you know that means a worker of iniquity is someone that doesn't mean they're out there, every day doing some horrible thing. I mean, it can be, but it's just basically someone who's doing it the world's way versus God's way, and that's a worker of iniquity. Someone who, these are people that they populate the churches. They're very religious. You know what I mean? And Jesus says, "Depart from me, you who work iniquity." It's very simple. If you're part of the world system, you have then become a worker of iniquity because the world system is iniquity. I just point to you as Exhibit A. Wars, rumors of wars, Ukraine, Russia, Syria, Middle East, explosion, ISIS, Iraq, Afghanistan, blah, 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 Ferguson, economy, and the general malaise in the world, everywhere you look, Ebola, all of it, terrorism, everything is the world. And that I'm not going to give consent to that. I give consent to the Lord's way. And the other thing is the Bible teaches very clearly you can't have it both ways. You have to decide what side you're on. It's either, the best way to decide that is to find out who you are. What kind of a person are you? I was made for the spirit. I love the spiritual thing. I love the octaves and things. I mean, I'm not kind of impractical materially. And if I were of the world, then I would choose the world. I actually don't believe one is actually better than the other. In a sense, I see that we need all aspects to make the whole. And in that, I see God as perfect. I see everything as perfect. But then when I'm experiencing the pain and suffering, and I see other people suffering, and I get back into my flesh and stuff, then I'm wailing and weeping. I also see myself as participating in something, wailing and weeping. That is part of the wholeness, and which is ultimately good. So it's very mysterious. I hope I've helped. I don't know if I have. And just so you know, I make this statement occasionally for new listeners. I don't consider myself a teacher, a prophet, anything. I'm nobody. I really, really believe that. I'm just a being. I have certain talents and other things I, don't do too well. But I can't go there because I've just seen so much destruction when people label themselves. So I don't say apostle. I don't say any of these words. Maybe disciple, a follower. That's about it. Other people have said, well, you have a prophetic gift. And I'm like, yeah, sometimes, I guess. I don't know. I just don't feel it. I don't feel like I rise to that level. But I do get some accurate things now and again. When I get something, I tend to share it. And this paradigm shift that I've described is completely counterintuitive and counter. It's counter to what all the conspiracy and all the so-called prophetic voices and all that stuff. They're all talking about something else, something quite opposite. I'm saying, well, this is something I picked up on. I should share it. And if that's true, then they want to bring John Wayne back and bring decorum, virtue, and all that back, and not let it go barbarian. And they can see their own. It's self-interest, actually. You pull the plug because you see your own destruction in it. So you pull the plug because you have children, you have vested interest, you own corporations. You see that you see that you can't get to the stated goal the way you're going. So you pull the plug and you burn the assets and you move on. Assets, you need plausible plus you want cover. So there's the cover. You pull the plug, you cover it up, you become, you do good works, and pretty soon, the lid's back on. Weird, huh? And I'm not saying that it won't be a total mess on the way. I am saying to look for certain signposts, like one, how ISIS is dealt with, and how this Middle Eastern this sort of European, war with Russia type of thing, how all this goes. With that, I bid you shalom. And if this goes up, then it's yours. If not, then I believe that I have to really get on my knees and repent.